Hey everyone, it's a beautiful morning here in Arizona, and I thought I'd just take the opportunity to make a little video about my 1987 Volkswagen Golf GTI. Now, I've had this car for about 10 years, I'd say. I think I got it in 2008, and I bought it originally for 100 or 1,500 bucks. And I got my money's worth because it was really kind of a piece of crap. It had overheating problems and all kinds of just little, you know, bits and pieces breaking everywhere. So this has really been like the biggest project car I've ever had. But it's also been one of the most fun cars that I've had, and it's really taught me a lot just how to work on cars, taking care of everything on it. So I'm not quite sure how many miles I have on it. When I bought it from the guy, it already had 150 something thousand on the odometer, and he said he'd been driving it for years, and the odometer was broken when he got it. It was broken when I got it. So I have no idea how many miles are actually on this poor car. But if I had to guess, it would be over 300,000. Because I mean, I've just had to replace pretty much everything on this car almost. So anyway, let me tell you about what it's like to own a car like this for a long time. First thing I'll tell you is, even though this car looks, just like a cheap little hatchback from the '80s, it's actually, got pretty good build quality for that type of car back in the day. There was a lot of other options back then, during the '80s, for just cheap kind of econoboxes. But in my opinion, this Golf was probably the best one you could buy at the time. And, this car has its roots from the '70s, and this is actually the second generation Golf. I don't even know what generation Golf they're on now, probably like 10 or something. But this is actually my favorite not year Golf, favorite generation Golf, just from like a styling point. And it was the last Golf that was really like a lightweight car. I'd say the most fun thing about driving this car is it only weighs 2,000 pounds, and you can just zip around in it. It doesn't have a lot of power. It's only got about, I'd say, 100 to 110 horsepower. I forget what the ratings were. They had some kind of different spec engines and stuff at the time. And this isn't the 16 valve version, unfortunately. This is just the 8 valve version. But it's a very reliable car, once you get it sorted out. Those old engines that Volkswagens were using in the '80s are just bulletproof almost. If you got, everything, all the hoses and stuff attached. That's one thing, is if your vacuum's gone and stuff, the car will run like crap. But just like in terms of piston rings and everything, I've never had to rebuild this engine. I've replaced the valve covers on it, but it's really a pretty bulletproof engine. It's a little 1.8 liter, and this car is not fast. I mean, it accelerates like 0 to 60 probably around 12 seconds or something. I don't know, but the funnest thing about this car is it's just so zippy. And they used a lot of good suspension parts even back then, but I have done a lot of mods on this car. It was actually kind of modded before I bought it, and unfortunately the guy who did it didn't really know what he was doing, and he kind of beat the car up. But I replaced everything that needed to be replaced. I put new shocks, new brakes, new steering wheel, new shifter, just a lot of different parts on it. So now I've got a pretty good working car. A lot of safety equipment's been updated. Like I put steel braided brake lines on, so I don't have to worry about the old rubber ones cracking. And these are actually what size wheel you would get back in the '80s, I think. On this GTI model, you got 15-inch wheels, and that really gives the car a lot more stability. The car wasn't this low when it was first, sold. These springs lowered a couple inches just to give it a little better, stance and a little better handling when you're taking turns really fast. And that's actually why I bought this car, because you can take turns just ridiculously fast in this car. Say you're coming up to a red light, or not a red light, but like a turn, like a 45-degree intersection. You can just come at it at like 40 miles an hour, turn the wheel and just smash it into the turn, and it'll turn faster than you would ever imagine. Actually, I was scared. A few of my friends doing it, they're like, oh my god, I can't believe it. So anyways, that's the outside of the car. I put those stickers on, of course. Those aren't original. And the wheels aren't the original style either. Those are newer style wheels. And I've put sports tires on it too, so the traction's just great. You feel every little bump in the road. You feel just like everything the car's doing. And that's one thing that, the new cars are kind of losing. You just don't get that road feel that you did with these old lightweight cars. And this car really is quite small. I don't know if you can tell just from the video, but it's very utilitarian too. If I actually have like a big item I need to take somewhere, I take this car because, I've got the speakers in the trunk now, but you've actually got quite a lot of room back here. And if you can actually tip the seats forward and get more room. And of course I have this sway bar here, but if you didn't have that, you could put, a really big item back in the trunk here. And so, it's great for just hauling stuff around. Yeah, I got like I got an amp and stuff back here right now, which doesn't give me any room in the trunk. But I can take all this stuff out pretty quick. And this Eurosport bar here, that actually kept, when I put that in, I noticed the car's rigidity just really tightened up, because you got this, big space back here in the back, and then you stabilize it with that bar, and the car just becomes like really stiff, and you can feel it. There's like no flex at all in the body after you put that in. And I guess I'll show you the engine too. Just release the hood here. I put a little air vent in here just to help with cooling when I bought it, because I couldn't figure out why it was overheating for a while. And like I said, the guy didn't really know what he was doing. And what had happened was he put this, new electric fan in there, and he wired it backwards. So it was actually trying to blow air out this way instead of sucking air in to cool the radiator. So the car was overheating for a while. But I finally figured it out, what was going on. And this is the, little 80s engine. You got a bunch of tubes and wires and stuff. Some of this stuff is not original. I had to pull out some of the original hoses, and just because, they don't make replacements for them, and just kind of craft my own. This is one of them here, this thing. There used to be like a molded thing in here, but I just ripped it out and put a different hose in. And the car runs, okay. It's got one of these kind of weird style fuel injectors where it's kind of like half electronic and half vacuum. This is like, when cars were just getting into the fuel injection, all the car companies were starting to do that, and they all kind of have their different ideas about how to do it. But this system works okay. It's a little Bosch, I forget what the exact name of it, but it's like a Bosch system that they used in just a bunch of different cars back then. And I've never had any problems with it per se. But the worst thing that I'm having right now is the computer is dead on it. This was like one of the first cars they put the computer into. And it's supposed to regulate, like the fuel mixture and stuff, especially when the car's cold. And it's just gone, and I don't know how to fix it. And so when I first start the car, it's often got kind of a rough idle until it warms up. And other than that, though, like when the car warms up, it just runs great. And I've driven this car up and down California, over here to Arizona. And I've really never been stranded by it or anything like that. Oh, and like in the back, I got a new speed strut bar here. The amount of aftermarket parts for this car is really incredible. I think they're kind of drying up at this point just because the car's kind of old and it's not as popular in the US as it used to be, but there's still a lot of just aftermarket parts you can grab if you want to pick up one of these cars. So let me show you the interior too. Obviously these aren't the original seats, I put these in. And you know, there's my gauge cluster there. You can see I got 146,000 miles on the odometer, which has never worked since I bought the car. And it's nice, you get a little tack there, and you get, you know, a temperature gauge, which is really handy because you always want that in an older car. And I put the old, I took out the old stereo and I put a, you know, new CD player in and whatnot. And these are your electric windows here. And unfortunately my car doesn't have air conditioning, so it kind of just sits here, and during the summer I kind of park it off to the side of my house, and it doesn't get driven for about 3 or 4 months during the summertime. But that's okay, because I got some other cars too. And you know, we got a crank, what do you call this, sunroof here, so that's nice. And the back seats too, now that I have these Sparco seats in here, it's hard to get back there, but you know, there's actually quite a bit of room in the back here for passengers. I've had, you know, guys over 6 feet tall ride back there, and they got plenty of knee room and everything. So even though this car is so small, there's actually a lot of just like room in it, surprisingly, and they were pretty smart just making it feel like a lot bigger car. You know, you got all kinds of little cubbies and stuff. You got a big pocket here in the door to put stuff in. You got a pocket here. You got a pocket here in front of the gear shifter. And you got another little pocket here. Another pocket of the door. So I mean, there's all kinds of little storage, like cubbies and stuff. And here, I guess I'll start it for you too while we're in the car here so you can hear it. Now I've got an aftermarket exhaust in here, so it's a little louder than it would normally be. I don't know if you can hear it. It's got a nice sound. It doesn't sound like, you know, one of those Hondas that got a fart can on them. It sounds like it's a lot stronger than the engine actually is, actually. And it's a fairly smooth engine. I don't really have any too much complaints for it. And the interesting thing about the gearing is it's geared very low. Like, I think this car was really just made for kind of tooling around little German cities and stuff. So when you're on the freeway and you're in 5th gear, it's the RPMs are like 3,500, and it's kind of loud, which is you know, a little rough on taking it on road trips and stuff. But I don't really do that anymore. I usually just kind of race around like town in it. And this car's really good up in, like, you know, if you take it up into a mountain or something and you get the curves, you know, the hills and stuff, that's when it's really fun. And I haven't been able to do that for a while, unfortunately, because I live in the you know, in the more populated areas now. But it's still fun to just drive around, and you know, it's very, very practical car overall. So yeah, I mean, just fixing it, they literally made millions of these cars, and there are still parts pretty well available if you just need to fix, you know, well, anything really, except there's some parts I would have trouble getting. Like if I needed a new computer, I have no idea where I get one. And if I needed like little vacuum hoses for the heater and stuff, I would have no clue how to replace those, because I don't know, they use just like these little weird vacuum lines everywhere in the dash, and the heater's all vacuum controlled, and that's not working anymore either. So I got no heat, I got no air. This is really just a toy car. And I actually used to race this car too. I was in the SCCA for just like a year, and I did an autocross with this car, you know, where you race around the cones and whatnot in the big parking lot. And I didn't do very well. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was in the West Coast finals, and you know, I got pretty much next to last place. But you know, my car is not like a typical race car, but it is a lot of fun, and you can go around the cones pretty quickly in this old car. What else can I tell you about it? I think that's about it for now. Yeah, if you're looking to get one of these, they can still be had relatively cheap. You know, they're not like collector cars yet, but I think they might be in the future just because they were so popular. You know, maybe not in the U.S. as much as Europe. In Europe, these things are super popular. You know, you still see them at all the car shows and everything, and you know, people just go crazy for these things in Europe. But here, you know, no one actually really gives me any you know, comments on it or anything. It's just kind of an invisible car here from what I can tell. But yeah, you can still get one for like, I don't know. It's hard to find a nice one, but if you did find a really nice one, I'd say like, you know, $5,000 is pretty much what you're gonna pay for it. I mean, for like a really nice one, not a beat up one like mine. So yeah, this is just my toy car. Something a little different today, but I wanted to show it off to you guys, and I hope you enjoyed this little video I made. So have a good one, and I'll see you next time.